between traditional leaders, civil society, and the state. It will ensure that the voices of Nananom and the values of our cultural institutions continue to guide public policy and national development. Your Royal Majesty, I know how you care much about infrastructure development. In my first tenure as President, we worked together on several projects in the road, transport, education, health, trade, and water sectors. We worked together to build the iconic KJTR Market Phase 1. And other several satellite markets in the Greater Kumasi area. We expanded and upgraded the Kumasi International Airport. We started construction of several hospitals in Ashanti, including Sewia and Afari Military Hospital, which sadly were abandoned. We constructed several community day schools in various parts of Ashanti. We completed the 3K water project, which gave Konongo and Kumawu water, and reconstructed several roads in the Kumasi metropolitan and surrounding districts. Your Majesty, under the Big Push infrastructure program, we're once again about to start investments in major infrastructure projects across the country. And as the second most populous region in Ghana, Ashanti will not be left out. Your Majesty, I'm happy to report to you that we will soon undertake the feasibility study and design of the new Accra-Kumasi Expressway. We hope to be able to cut the sod early next year for work on this transformational project to commence. Your Majesty, it is our intention to continue and complete the Phase 2 of the KJTR Market project, which has been affected by the debt exchange program. We will also commence construction of the Kumasi Outer Ring Road project. This is a project that takes a road round Kumasi through Ejisu and appears on the Mampong and Techiman roads. We'll start the first quadrant to take big trucks through Ejisu to come out.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
Well, good morning and thank you very much for choosing Pan-African Television. We are live from our studios in Abelemkpe. We are live on TV, and of course, we are live on social media. You can join us. Facebook, Pan-African Television, YouTube, Pan-African Television. If you do join us on any of those platforms, use the comment section, share a thought or two on the discussions we'll be having today. We are live on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. We are also live on many other affiliate stations across the country. This is the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Here we say it as it is, no matter who is involved in, and we'll leave you better educated. I am SENA NOMBO. This morning, we're discussing what started last week, and of course has intensified this week with a lot of conversations around what next. Now, especially the fact that the U.S. is weighing a direct involvement in the conflict between Israel and Iran. Now, 3 particular tweets attracted attention this week from the U.S. President Donald Trump. In fact, they are still on X. If you go there, you see them. One is just unconditional surrender. The second one was, we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but he's safe there. We are not going to take him out. In quotation, this thing, kill. Then he says, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then the last one. This is where he started from. We have now complete and total control over the skies over Iran. Iran had Ghost Sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. That is the U.S. President, Donald Trump. Now, there's been a caution from the Iranians. In fact, this is the foreign minister who has described as dangerous. But this is an update from the Al Jazeera today. First, it says Iran has launched an early morning missile attack on central Israel, resulting in a fire in Holon. Several Israeli attacks were reported, including on Iran's Isfahan home to a key nuclear research center. And it continues, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says it will be very dangerous for everybody if U.S. joins Israel's aggression. It will be dangerous for everybody if U.S. joins Israel's aggression. Well, from reading Donald Trump's tweet, he's telling us that they're already involved anyway. But Iran says any direct involvement will be very dangerous for everybody. So we'll be talking about the U.S. weighing its options, what they want to do as the strikes intensify from both sides. And then we'll move on to the new patriotic party. Typically when parties go into an election, they lose, they come out, they go for what they call a reorganization. They elect executives from the grassroots up all the way to the national level, and those new executives then elect a new leader for the party to take them into the next presidential elections. That's typical. Not this time around. The NPP has decided that let's start from the top and then go to the bottom. So those who took the party into the dramatic, the very terrible loss, will be the one who will choose the leader for them, the leader that will take them into 2028 before they go for elections themselves. Well, there are a lot of people who have had very strong reactions to the suggestion that on January 31st, the party will go to primaries, presidential primaries, and elect a flag bearer for 2028, January 31st, 2026. We'll discuss that. And then we'll conclude with an interview that was granted to Ken Oforiatta, former finance minister's wife by Joy FM earlier this week, explaining why he is unable to respond to the OSP's invitation to come and answer questions for certain investigations that they are undertaking that involve him as their main suspect. We'll conclude with that on today's discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, you are an important part of the show, but joining me in the studio to discuss these issues this morning, Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. We are also joined by lawyer Andrew Apia Dankwa from the Movement of Change, spokesperson for the Movement for Change. And then from Parliament, we are joined by Honorable Peter Lanchini Tobu, who is Member of Parliament for Wawes, Deputy Ranking Member on the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. Honorable, good morning. Vice Chairman, forgive me, I'm putting you in opposition. Vice Chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
And thank you very much for joining us.
Good to see you.
Yeah. And then to complete our panel today, Anasi Dusando is International Affairs Analyst and also the Administrative Secretary, Office of Shia Muslim Community. Anas, good morning. Yeah, nice to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's our panel today. Of course, let's start off the discussion from what is happening in Iran. And I'll start with lawyer on this one. Good morning to you. Once again.
Good morning, sir. Let me take the opportunity to wish your lovely viewers a good morning. Wish Honorable what's called?
Oh, Anas.
Anas,
yeah.
And Comrade Kwesi Pratt, good morning. So I was hoping that you start off with the experts. And this matter, but what's good? I'll try my best on this issue, which is really grave and which we all need to take a keen interest in. But there are so many sides to this issue. There are so many sides. A lot of things have been said that makes it a bit difficult structuring a presentation on it. My personal view has been that when you are faced with any issue, attempt to stick to principle. And once you stick to principle, as you can always find your way, because principles, they say, never change. As in, principles never change. I think the starting point, in my opinion, ought to be with the formation of the UN. Because if there's something that I personally find worrying, is the lack of leadership in how this conflict is being handled. Now, we need to recall that at the advent of the 20th century, the world was plagued with two major wars, two great wars. First one in 1914, ended in 1918. Then the Second World War started from 1939, ended in 1945. Indeed, there's an argument that the Second World War was a continuation of the First World War. Now, these two wars led to the loss of close to 100 million human beings. Led to the loss of about 100 million human beings. The loss in military life was around about 40 million. Civilians, over 60 million civilians lost their lives because of this war. And because of the devastating impact of wars. I haven't spoken about people, the casualties in terms of injuries. I've not spoken about casualties in terms of loss of livelihoods, the destruction that was caused as a result of the war. So issues that borders on war are not issues that must be dealt with lightly. As we have been blessed not to have faced any war, so the war seems to have forgotten about the devastating nature of some of these wars. But when you read the UN Charter, and the UN was created after the Second World War, after the First World War, they tried, they attempted the creation of the League of Nations, but it didn't work, and so then they formed the UN after. Now, when you take the UN Charter, and because I always like to look at the purpose for why some of these groups are formed. Now, when we take a cursory look at the UN Charter and then the preamble, because the preamble sets out in plain language the purpose, the principles, the values that underpins the creation of that organization. I think, SENA, if you permit me, I want to read this. Now, in the UN Charter, Article 1, which states the purpose. It says that according to Article 1 of the Charter, the purpose of the United Nations are 1, to maintain international peace and security, and to that end take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, 2, suppress acts of aggression, 3, bring about peaceful settlement of disputes in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, and also to develop friendly relations among nations based on the respect of the principles of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, 3, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinctions to race, sex, language, or religion, and to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. Now, when you go to the preamble says that the reason why the UN members to save succeeding generation from the scourge of war. So that's why the UN was formed. As in, the focus of the UN was to prevent wars based on the experience the world had in the extent of loss of life during that period. I think right now, this generation, most of the people who lived in that generation are gone, so we don't seem to remember the devastating impact of wars. Now, having spoken about, as in given why the UN was formed and the desire of the international community and the UN to prevent wars and to prevent aggression, to lay down the principles that ought to govern the relation between nations, we need to also then look closely at or give a historical perspective to the situation between what's called Iran, US, and then Israel. Now, I know that arguments have been made that one of the fundamental effects of especially the First World War and also the Second World War was in entrenching the principles of democracy. But we need to understand that under legacy of the First World War was the problems in the Middle East. Because the First World War began the creation of the state Israel, and all the problems that how that was handled has created. Now, it is interesting to note that when Israel became a state, and whereas most of the Arab nations refused to grant them the recognition, Iran recognized Israel as a state at that time. Iran recognized Israel as a state, and so for a very long time, Iran and Israel were sort of allies. Indeed, we also need to understand that Iran and the US were also allies in this nuclear program that can be argued to be the basis for why there has been a lot of problem between us and that seems to be leading us to what potentially can be a very devastating war. Was started by the US. You understand? Now the relation between the US, Iran, and Iraq changed after the 1979 revolution, where the Islamist revolution, where Iran became a theocratic state, and Ayatollah Khomeini took control. Now, I'm saying all this because to attempt to understand the issues, you need to understand why there's a conflict in the first place. Because this conflict, in my opinion, is a continuation of the 1979 issue. The 79 issue that led to a breakdown in the relation between the US and Iran. The same 79 issue that caused the US to support Iraq. And in fact, some people make an argument that they were really the people behind that war, in the Iraq-Iran war. It's a continuation of that what's called a conflict. Because when you try to understand why Iraq, Iran, the US, and Israel are at each other's throat, Israel and US on one side against Iran, in my view, it's because of the 79 issue. Because when you analyze their issues or the reason why they are at each other's throat, essentially, one, it borders on issue of ideology. Because we have a situation where Iran sees the US and Israel as, but they term the US as big Satan, Israel as small Satan. And Israel also, for whatever reason, think that what's called Iran are an existential threat against them. You get a picture. And two, this nuclear program. Now, the reason why I'm talking about I talk about principle is because of the fact that in 1968 and the same was adopted in 1970, the world, following from the principles of the UN Charter, adopted what they call the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, that treaty stands on three legs. So there's the essence of that treaty, because you know when you take the context of what's called the Cold War, because in the 60s when the world was in the throes of the Cold War, they felt that they needed to have a treaty which will prevent the proliferation or the horizontal proliferation of nuclear weapons. And so they signed this treaty, which essentially stood on three legs. The first leg is the non-proliferation leg. Now, this leg essentially is saying that they have nuclear weapon states and they have non-nuclear weapon states. See, the word is very interesting. So some states have the right, so they have nuclear weapons, and they have non-nuclear weapon states. Now, the nuclear weapon states should not or they should commit to not proliferating the nuclear weapons horizontally to the non-nuclear weapon states. And the non-nuclear weapon states should commit to the non-manufacturing of nuclear weapons. Two, then the second leg is in the peaceful use of nuclear energy. And so we all have the right to use nuclear what's called to undertake a nuclear program, but for the purposes of energy. And then the last bit, and which for me is the one that is interesting and which has to be looked at, is the disarmament. That through goodwill and through negotiations and through treaty, the nuclear weapon states should attempt at disarming their nuclear weapons. Because if you believe in principle, and you have a case where Israel feels threatened because Iran is, in their opinion, undertaking a nuclear weapon agenda, but Israel has nuclear weapons, then unless we look critically at this disarmament bit of it, and they also should critical or serious commitment to the third leg. Because it's like those who have the nuclear weapons are just focusing on the first leg. Because that's the issue the US has always had with Iran. But there are 3 legs to the NPT. There are 3 legs to it. So when you read the Article 6 requires all states, especially nuclear weapon states, to pursue negotiations in good faith on effective measures toward nuclear disarmament. This includes halting the nuclear arms race and eventually achieving total disarmament under international control. So there are 2 legs. So whereas the non-nuclear weapon states are not supposed to proliferate or are not supposed to create, the ones that also have must also undertake a program which will create a situation where, listen, there's total disarmament of nuclear power. Because we need to recall that in 1945, I think specifically on 11th August, when the US dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the fact that the effects of the ripples of those acts are still seen today, and the impact of nuclear weapons to cause catastrophe. The world felt that we needed to have a situation where those who have already, prior to 1968, who have already acquired it, should take serious steps at total disarmament of same. And that's why I'm talking about a principle here. Now, anyway, so we'll go back to that. So now you have a situation where Israel thinks that, and with the support of America, they can take certain acts against Iran based on, because essentially the reason for this war are essentially on the 2 things, on the ideological issue and on this nuclear issue. But there's a history there too. Now, we need to recall that after 2002, when America started giving serious economic sanctions against Iran because they felt that Iran were breaching certain sections of this treaty, specifically in terms of allowing IA, so International Atomic Energy Association Agency, to inspect your nuclear program. The US introduced sanctions. Now, when Obama became president, he managed to get some form of agreement with Iran. And the effect of the agreement essentially was, something, we will take away the sanctions and also put a cap on your nuclear, amassment of your nuclear energy. And Iran complied. Now, Iran complied, and we will not have had this problem if in 2018, Donald Trump had not unilaterally pulled out of this agreement. So in 2018, he pulled out of this agreement and reintroduced the sanctions on Iran. And then Iran essentially started breaching this again. So clearly, we are, in my view, we are where we are because over the years, in spite of all the beautiful principles we've outlined to prevent war, because the UN, the purpose for which the UN was formed was to create a situation where future generations, and we are the future generation now, based on the experience of the world, will not be faced with the scourge of war. Because like I'm saying, over 100 million lives were lost because of the First and Second World War. And so the principles, UN laid out the principles. You understand? That ought to govern international relations. Now, flowing from the Second World War, and after the advent of the Cold War, America has come out as the sole superpower now. If there's a time for America to use its leadership to achieve the purpose for which the UN was set up, then it is now. So, the kind of noise the US is making, and we know where the Ayatollah Khamenei is, and what's called Israel saying that they are going to clear the leader of a sovereign nation. You understand? Instead of using diplomacy to de-escalate, because beyond the loss of life, in terms of its impact on the global economy, it's devastating. So, personally, instead of the US giving out a communication that seems to suggest that Israel is doing what they are doing because of their tacit support, indeed because of their approval, thus even killing any chance of serious diplomacy. Because right now, in fact, I think yesterday, the foreign secretary of Iran came out to say that they did not trust the US. And so right now, it is practically impossible for the US to use any form of serious diplomacy to cause a de-escalation of what is happening. Understand? So, my personal view is that there need to be a de-escalation, a serious one. Because immediately US goes ahead with this threat of aiding Israel to attack Iran, there is a high possibility that the allies of Iran, because you don't want a case where China or Russia or the other proxy states like Lebanon, like Syria, Turkey, would jump into the fray. Because what will be happening then is a third world war. There's a possibility, we shouldn't underestimate the impact of a US attack on Iran. Because we should not assume that Iran is a state in isolation. They also have their allies. Because that's what happened with the First World War and the Second World War. In the Second World War, for instance, Germany attacks Poland. Britain declares war on Germany. Italy declares war on Britain. France declares war on Germany. Russia declares war on Germany. By the time the world realized it was a full-blown war. And so with this experience, it is a bit disappointing, especially when the same US, under a different leader, felt that diplomacy was the way to go and found a way of entering into some kind of agreement with Iran. The fact that the Iranians agreed to that agreement, I'm talking about the GCOPA here, the fact that they agreed to it is a bit disappointing that the same US, under a different regime, would take a stand which threatens the entire globe. Because like I'm saying, if the US does not take this, does not take opportunity of its leadership and show leadership and use that leadership to cause de-escalation of hostilities. Because one, the US finds itself in a very special position. We all know that Israel is, some people even think Israel is the 52nd state of the US. And the same US has sanctioned Iran. What prevents the US from saying, listen, Iran, stop what you are doing, we are going to remove the sanction. Israel, stop attacking. If really their commitment is towards peace and towards a fulfillment of the terms of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, then in fact they can even go further and say that, listen, beyond the non-nuclear weapon states not amassing, we the US are going to lead the third leg of that treaty. All of us signed. We all signed that treaty. They all agreed that we need to sign on to a non-proliferation treaty. Before that treaty, some countries have gone ahead and amassed nuclear weapons. They are saying that, listen, for those countries that have not amassed, because if US, Russia, Israel can amass the nuclear weapons, what should prevent another state to also amass? Because when we decided to form the UN, one of the abiding principles in that Committee of Nations was in the understand that all countries are equal. All nations are equal. One nation is not more equal than another. Because that's the fundamental principle that underpins public international law. That all nations are equal. It shouldn't matter whether you're a rich nation or not. You understand? So that if we are adhering to the principle of equality, the principle of sovereignty in how international relations are done, then we should stop this hypocrisy and the US being the undisputed global power now should use the power they have, one, to cause a de-escalation, and two, to ensure that the terms of the non-proliferation treaty is adhered to. Because they are attacking Iran, but the nuclear weapon states, what steps have they taken to fulfill the terms of that treaty? If Israel is saying that they are going around bombing the nuclear stations of Iran, but because they fear that Iran may use those nuclear weapons to attack them. Then can't Iran also make an argument that they have a right to self-defense, that they also do not trust that Israel, who has nuclear weapons, can use the nuclear weapons against them? You understand? And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes when you are faced with any confusion, attempt to stick at principle. Because we are where we are because we seem, we enjoy speaking and writing and doing fine face. But when it comes to showing a fidelity to values and to principles, we always seem to be wanting. Because I've heard arguments made, and not even arguments, the way sometimes the West carries themselves is as if the lives of the people matter than the lives of those of us who are not in the western part of the world. And I find that very interesting, especially so when you go into the preamble to the Constitution of the US, where they say that we find this to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That all men are created equal, and that we all have an inalienable and inviolable right to life and to the pursuit of happiness. I think they must show their fidelity to these principles in how they handle these issues. Because what is going to happen is that if they do not use their leadership to cause a de-escalation, then there will be a fundamental violation of these rights against the people of Iran. Because their lives also matter. They also have an inalienable, inviolable right to their lives. They have an inalienable, inviolable right to pursue their own happiness. You get a picture. So I believe strongly that the US is not easy, but the US should find a way. Now, there are states like Oman, there are states like Switzerland. They can use what we call the track 2 diplomacy, because Iran has come out and said that they do not trust. So they should find a way of getting some of these states to bring the two parties onto the table and start serious negotiations. Now, Iran has also said, and I agree with that position, that how can I have a negotiation with you on peace when the missiles and bombs are still flying, when you are still acting aggressively towards me? And so you cease all aggression, then we can sit down and then tackle the issues. Because what are the issues? I'm saying that one, there was what's called a regime change in Iran in 1979. There was a regime change in Iran in 1979. Now, they themselves, so there was a radical change in how Iran themselves saw things. Now, the principle is, as I've made this argument when the Niger issue happened, the Niger and Burkina Faso issue happened, and we strangely decided to attack them. The problem is that where a revolution or a coup d'etat happens and it succeeds, then that revolution or coup d'etat is legal. Indeed, America became a nation on the back of a revolution. You understand? So, on the issue of the ideological differences that is leading to this, I think both parties need to be honest with themselves and face principle here. You cannot, well, essentially, from what I'm saying, I think their focus is to cause a regime change in Iran, which will be a fundamental breach of the sovereignty of Iran. Because the people of Iran have a right to self-determination, to determine who governs them and who leads them. You understand? So, we isolate the issues on the ideological issues, have a frank discussion. If it means Iran also respecting what's called the right of Israel, to which they already did, because when majority of the countries in the Middle East refused, and they still refuse to recognize Israel as a nation, Iran did, probably under a different regime, but it was Iran. You understand? And the US also needs to respect the right of the Iranians to have their own government. Two, I'm going to reiterate this position, and then I'll be closing very soon on this. America finds itself in a very special situation. You can use the sanctions they've placed on Iran, which is crippling the economy of Iran, as a basis to cause Iran to come on the negotiation table What is wrong with the treaty they signed, the GCOP? That they signed. America needs to immediately recommit itself to the terms of that treaty. Give a cap on Iran, and you, the US, take away those sanctions. And thirdly, they must then find a way of enforcing the terms of the NPT. The focus shouldn't be just on us, the non-nuclear weapon countries, but the nuclear weapon countries must also show their commitment to the NPT we all signed by undertaking serious disarmament agenda. Because the focus of that NPT is to bring a situation where there will be no nuclear weapons, as it were, so that the purpose, the aim, the objectives for why the United Nations was formed, the preamble, we said that so that the future generation shall not be faced with the scourge of war, can be realized. Otherwise, if they, because I know he's giving Iran some 2 weeks, he's saying that he's losing patience. If America does the mistake of entering this war that we all don't want, there's a huge chance that the world will be on the brink of a world war. Because who knows? China may step in, Russia may step in, Turkey may step in. There'll be a huge crisis in the Middle East, and then I don't know how we'll handle the rippling effect of this. So to end, I'll call on the President of the United States, Donald Trump. He touts the fact that during his first term, he didn't begin any war. He claims he does not want war. He must himself show commitment to the principles expressed by the US themselves, seen in their constitution. He must realign himself to the principles, the objects, the purpose of the UN Charter. And he must use his leadership, the leadership of the US, to ensure that there's proper de-escalation, that we put in place a system which will ensure that this Iran, Israel, all the issues which clearly are, in my opinion, are based on our propensity to chart the course of on principle, do not lead us to the brink of war. Because we are all one people, need a peaceful world where all of us, all of God's children, all of us, white men, black men, red men, Jews, Gentiles, Christians, Muslims, all of us, because we all have an inalienable right to pursue our own beliefs. All of us can live together and sit together on the table of brotherhood and create a situation where we can all have the best chance of fulfilling our individual objectives in this life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lawyer Adrapia Dankwa is a spokesperson for the Movement for Change. Of course, what he just said, this is Antonio Guterres, who is Secretary General to the UN. He says, my message to the parties and potential parties to the conflict between Israel and Iran is simple and clear. Give peace a chance. Now, remember he says that my message to the parties, so at this point, Israel and Iran, but he also adds potential parties. So it means that even at the UN, they are even considering the possible escalation of this beyond Israel and Iran. And from listening to Donald Trump, you can see that is something that they are seriously considering. This is, let me share with you a view from the opposition in the United States. One of the leading voices of the opposition, Bernie Sanders, shared his opinion on whether he thinks the U.S. should be part of this. And of course, Turkey has also, the president of Turkey has also been speaking. This is Bernie Sanders, who says, Netanyahu is not the president of the United States. He should not be determining U.S. foreign and military policy. If the people of Israel support his decision to start a war with Iran, that is their business and their war. The United States must not be part of it. Now, when you're tracking the conversations that are ongoing, immediately below his comments, a post made by the daughter of the U.S. president, Ivanka Trump, where she is asking, let your voice be heard. Do you support Israel's decision to attack Iran? And has done yes, no. So it's interesting the kind of voices in the head, in the ears of Donald Trump and what they are thinking at this time. In fact, there were some people initially in the Donald Trump regime who had who had condemned Israel's attack on Iran. But after the president took a hardline position, they had to backtrack. This is Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey. He says, I call on countries with influence over Israel not to listen to its poison. A solution must be found via dialogue. That is president of Turkey. I come to my immediate left.
Thank you very much, SENA. My good friend has done so much justice to the topic. He is an international relations person. He's a lawyer. He understands what.
He's only a lawyer. He's an international relations person.
I think that you deserve to go back and add that to your title, because you've gone deep so much into the topic, and I was just admiring and listening to you deeply. But let's go ahead. What is happening? The UN will soon be 80 years. Ghana, we are talking about a 32-year-old constitution, which we say is a living document, and all of us should try as much as possible to understand that this is not a static document. It's a living document subject to change with time. The world 80 years ago, in 1945, is not the same world we are in now, in 2025. 80 years down the line, the world has changed so much. Through the Cold War, into now what we call probably a unipolar world. And I'm sure in the past, when we had the bipolar world, Iran even was thinking, and possibly within the Middle East, which happens to be the hub of trouble in this world. Let's look at the history of the First World War, the history of the Second World War, and you respect the central position of the East. You respect the central position where we have Israel located now. So anything that happens within that region should be a worry to everybody. Iran used to be a friend to the US. Israel, they say sometimes the 51st state of the US. And in international politics, we all know that there is only one principle. It is not about you being my friend. It is all about us sharing interests. If our interests flow together, we flow together. If we diverge in our interests, and that is the point disagreement starts. What is the interest of the United Nations in 1945? To prevent the scourge of another world war. So we can say, congratulations, United Nations. For 80 good years, the world, irrespective of all the conflicts that we had, the world is still virtually peaceful. But 80 years down the line, we should also believe that we need to be doing things differently. Look at the United Nations structure. We have 5 permanent nations. The United States, United Kingdom, France, China, and Russia. Irrespective of what you do, if you bring a resolution to the UN Security Council, one of these permanent nations or permanent states can just veto it. Recently it happened when we're looking at Gaza. Okay? The US vetoed it. So today there's a resolution right now before the UN Security Council saying that, can we stop what we are doing in Iran? Iran, can you stop what you are doing in Israel? And Russia comes to veto it. It goes nowhere. Are we not seeing that it is also time for us to begin to look at a possible reform of the whole United Nations itself? That 80 years down the line, if you are even a human being, you have been so old that you'll be thinking about your son or even your grandson taking over. It tells all of us as a world that the UN itself must be looked at. Permanent interests, not permanent friends. As you said, in 1948, when Israel was established, Israel was not a hostile nation. Iran was not a hostile nation. They were friends. What happened in 1979? But whatever happened, today we are talking about 2025. If you look at the fact that some people are more equal than others, some people want to become the world police. Some people think that they are more psychologically sound than others. Some people believe that some others are a bit not stable, that if you empower them too much and they run mad, the world will not be in peace. So we have the world police. We have big men in the world who try to control stuff for us to all have peace. It's okay. In every home there's a father. And I think that even in my former profession as a police officer, you have a crime officer who knows who to refer a fraud case to. And you have a crime officer who knows who to refer an assault case to. Each police officer in that office has a special skill. And you know that there are people you will not refer a rape case to. There are officers you will not want them to deal with money. In the same way in the world, the United Nations believes that there are people that we need to keep them in check. Who makes you the police? The United Nations came together and said, no, let's come together as a world to prevent what we've experienced, losing millions of our own people. Every life is worth living, and every human being in this world is important. Nobody is better than the other. It's just the application of our brains that brings about greener pastures and deserts. And I want to say hello to the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Smart Babu. He made a statement the last time. He said, let's develop a rich country, not rich people. Because people are running for greener pastures. They are not running to richer men. So when your country is developed and is stable, and you have jobs, and you can actually have a good life living, everybody will come here. So it's all about your country. If your country is better, people will begin to respect you. But if you posture yourself as a poor nation, even in negotiations, there will be balance of power, and you will not be respected so much. Donald Trump says he's running out of time. And I like the psychological war. He says, I've given 2 weeks. Let's think around it. And it's all about this non-proliferation treaty. Some countries have the right to have nuclear sites. Others don't have. Some countries have nuclear weapons. Others are not allowed to have. And Israel, in its current location, sees Iran as a doomsday country. So if a doomsday country can have the power to manufacture nuclear weapons, it is actually becoming an existential threat to Israel. So Israel says, listen, the people of Iran, we are brothers and sisters, we love you. We don't have a problem with you. We have a problem with your leaders. We have a problem with your government. We have a problem with the way they think. They think that they need to manufacture bombs, they need to manufacture nuclear weapons, and they have the capacity to actually destabilize countries or destroy a whole nation using force. So we will stop them in their tracks and not allow them to get to a point where they become very dangerous to the whole world. So we are fighting your government to make them, bring them in line with international thinking of a very peaceful nation so that we can coexist. That is the thinking of Israel.
No, sir, it is not.
Right? Great. Kwesi will have his chance.
Yeah,
but
it's not the thinking of Israel.
Right.
It's a complete distortion of the reality.
Okay. So we will discuss it. What Israel is looking at is the fact that if Iran is a potential, in fact, an existential threat, and it's all about nuclear weapons, can we stop them from producing nuclear weapons? If we have the capacity to stop them from producing nuclear weapons without touching even a single civilian in Iran, we will do that. The Iranian leaders, are they thinking the same way? Why do they want nuclear weapons? Nuclear is a power. Nations with nuclear power are doing so many things with nuclear. Nuclear is not necessarily negative. Nuclear is just like the AK-47 you carry. You can use the AK-47 to stop armed robbers from killing people. You can also use the AK-47 as an armed robber and kill people. So who is carrying the weapon is what the question is we have to ask. Who is carrying this dangerous weapon? How safe is the world should A carry the weapon? How safe is the world should B carry the weapon? Who decides the psychological state of the person carrying the weapon? And US thinks that, no, let's join Israel. I am not joining Israel in the open war, but I'm psychologically joining Israel to tell Iran, listen, stop what you are doing. In 2018, Donald Trump unilaterally pulled out of the negotiations. And I think that we're looking at the diplomatic approach to ensuring that if Iran is even going to have a nuclear power, that nuclear power should be power of development, not power for destruction. Why did they pull out? But the truth is that, you see, sometimes we argue on what we hear. We don't argue on what is not said. And in many occasions in international conflict, what is not said is actually the one that is driving the conflict, not what we hear. What is publicly stated is an understatement of what the reality is. Sometimes it's just a scratch. It's just a tip of the iceberg. Whatever Donald Trump is saying, the President of the United States, whatever he's saying, there is more that he will not say, and that's actually driving. That's why somebody is, Sanders is saying what? Bibi is not the one to determine America's foreign policy. Benjamin Netanyahu is not the American president. He doesn't determine America's military strategy. That is what he says publicly. But behind the scene, what is the relationship between Israel and the US? Are they just mere allies? Israel is sitting on a time bomb. And I remember when I used to live in Nazareth, traveling from Nazareth to Haifa, where they launch bombs and they launch some of the missiles. It's just about an hour's drive. If you look at what is happening, Israel is always prepared to know, I'm living in a very terrible environment. I'm living amongst my enemies. So you see, people in Israel have been oriented in their brain to know that any time at all it can happen. You hear a siren, and within 2 minutes, everybody disappears. They've gone to safe grounds. And they believe that it is normal. And when I used to live in Nazareth, I asked them, how do you live your life like this? They say, we've been living like this since 1948. So we give birth to our children, we tell them this is a very hostile environment. So whatever happens, we are willing and ready to live our lives. But we hope and dream that tomorrow, all these things will come to an end. We will have peace with Palestine. We will have peace with our neighbors, so that we can crisscross as human beings without being threatened. That is a discussion for another day. But if you look at the position of Donald Trump, these 2 weeks that he's talking about, Bibi is saying Trump should just wait. We are capable of dealing with the situation. And we are not attacking Iranians. And there is no war that between 2 armed forces, as conscious as you be, there is no way you cannot talk about collateral damage. You don't directly attack civilian population. You are attacking military targets. But in the process, there will be damages. And those damages are damages you cannot do anything about. Of course, they will tell you some percentage is allowed. Those percentages are human beings. They are civilians. They never call for war. And nobody is interested in war. You are trained to defend your country. You are trained to protect the people. So if somebody comes to attack your country and is killing your people, you have the right to what? Respond actively. So the response from Iran, as heavy as we see, and I know that Bibi believes that the Iron Dome, as overwhelmed as it is, has protected a lot in Israel. They've also bombed a lot in Iran. Irrespective of what happens at the end of the day, Israel will lose. Irrespective of what happens, Iran will lose. There is no winner in this game. It is a lose-lose battle. Both of them will suffer massive destruction of their own properties. And it will take them years to come back to the status quo. And I think that if you go on with this cycle, you develop for 10 years, you go back to war, destroy everything, and go back and start again. What is it that we want as a world? We want peace. What is it that brought us together in 1945 for us to form the United Nations? That we want to prevent the scourge of war. And your friends in 1945 are not the friends in 2025. So there are a lot of friends who were actually very good allies of the United States 50 years ago. Today they are not. There are a lot of people who were very close to Israel. Today they are not. Change is constant. And that is the reason why it is very dangerous to wage a war in the modern day, thinking that somebody is a very good friend. That friend of yours can betray you. I want to see peace in the Middle East. I want to see peace between Israel and Iran. This morning, working with the UN for some time, I have a lot of friends. This morning, I was actually online with my Iranian friend and my Israeli police officer. And I was asking them. And many of them, they'll tell you, this war is not so strategic for us. It's not about us, the people. No. Benjamin Netanyahu may have the reason why he's doing what he's doing. Khamenei may have the reason why he's doing what he's doing. But the people of Iran, if you get into Tehran today and you talk to the people, they'll tell you, we are not interested in the war. You get to Tel Aviv, go to Jerusalem, they will tell you, we are not interested in what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing. But we have leaders, and these leaders are providing leadership. If we don't love it, we don't like it, but we'll bear the consequences. That is where we are. If we have the opportunity, I'm sure if Israel has the opportunity, they want to change Bibi. And I'm very sure that if Iran has the opportunity, they want a new regime. But it is their sovereign right to do what they want to do if they want to do it themselves. So for me, if you are talking about Israel and Iran, we can sit and speak for hours. But it is for the people of Israel and the people of Iran to take a decision and say, let's smoke a peace pipe. Bombs do not bring peace. And of course, you can't be bombing and expect us to sit at the round table. It doesn't happen anyway. It is also a strategy that you bomb harder and you have a better place when it is time for the round table discussion. These are all skills in international conflict. The more damage you cause and demonstrate the power that you have, when we are at the round table, we understand that if you don't stop and we go back again, you will suffer more damages, or you suffer more in the hands of your enemy. So I show you my power, and you show me yours. Then we know which level you are and which level I am. So that when we meet at the round table and we are talking, is that like in security circles, when you have a double slap from a police officer, double slap from behind, when he asks you what is your name, you can even mention your name and mention your grandfather's name without knowing, because your brain is charged because of that slap. But when the person returns that slap to the police officer, it's a reflex action. It's not deliberate. The person doesn't intend to beat up the policeman. But reflex action will come. If you get a blow from that person, you appreciate that the law enforcement that you've been empowered to do is not arbitrary. You yourself must be respecter of the law that you are enforcing. And gradually, we'll get to where we are going. But for me, Israel must be at peace with its neighbors. Iran must be at peace with its neighbors. But I was just about to ask SENA why he brought a Shia community leader in Ghana on the panel. And I was wishing that you can bring a Jew to represent the Jew community in Israel on the panel. Because this is not a religious war. This is a war between Israel and Iran, with so many other nuances that we can't explain. But the truth of the matter is that if you religiously look at it, you will believe that this is more political than religious. So I'm just wondering why you will bring a Shia community leader in Ghana. They are Muslims. And Iran has over 90% Shia population. And I'm sure that he wouldn't say anything different from what I think he will say, because basically, if you are related...
So why don't you wait for the panelists to speak before you impugn motives and so on? Why are you doing this?
Great. When I'm done, I'm sure that he's here. He can correct.
The panelist hasn't even spoken, and you are starting to impute all kinds of things.
Listen,
why?
Listen, can I finish?
Why were you brought on the panel too? Knowing that you are pro-Israeli and so on, you are brought on the panel.
I'm not pro-Israeli.
You are pro-Israeli.
I'm not pro-Israeli. I'm not, no, Kwesi, I'm not pro-Israeli. I am saying that whether you are pro or not, what we want in this world is a very peaceful world. I won't support Israel bombing Iraq. And will I support Iran bombing Israel? No, I wouldn't do that. But what we're looking at...
So why are you challenging the credentials of your fellow panelists?
No.
When you are so pro-Israeli, nobody is challenging why you were brought on the panel.
I'm not pro-Israeli.
You are. Well, everything you have said is pro-Israeli.
Well, maybe that is the conclusion you are drawing. But let me land. Of course, we disagree to agree. This is a discussion. Fortunately for us, and for me and you, the bomb is not dropping at Pan-African TV. When we finish, we still go out and look at our faces and see that if it was like that, or we're living in Israel, or living in Jerusalem, or living in Tehran, probably the discussion will be different. But we are living in Ghana, and we are just sharing ideas. We'll get out of here and still take a cup of tea together, and we'll not hear any bomb drop. And that is the peaceful nature that we're all promoting, that this world should be peaceful as Ghana. Israel should be peaceful as Ghana. Iran should be peaceful as Ghana. You don't necessarily have to be pro-Shia or pro-Jew or pro-Israel or pro-Iran. You should be pro-peace. I am saying that everybody should be pro-peace, and Donald Trump himself should be pro-peace. Everybody who is getting involved in this matter might look at a peaceful resolution, a diplomatic approach. I have, throughout my years in life, I have never seen any war that was won with a bullet. I have never seen any war that was won with a bomb. I have never seen any war. The fear of a nuclear bomb is what is bringing all these matters. The fear of a nuclear bomb, because a nuclear bomb has a devastating effect. And people think that if people have nuclear bombs and there is a war and they decide to detonate nuclear bombs, this world will not be at peace. So whatever it is, because you take it cool. The fact is that we are in a peaceful Ghana, and we enjoy our peace. And we will like to see a peaceful Israel and a peaceful Iran.
Thank you.
You, before a panelist speaks,
That's okay.
you know, ascribing motives to him
that's okay.
and attacking his credibility.
No, I'm not attacking his
You are
credibility.
not allowed to do that.
That is fine. That is fine. So let's put it there. Let's go ahead. You are looking into my face. You are just signaling me. I'll be getting done very soon. You see, in this world, when you look at the reality of a particular situation and you put emotions away, I'm not an Israeli. I'm not an Iranian. I'm just a Ghanaian with some security background, understanding the nuances related to conflict and how devastating it can be, and the fact that the world has suffered it twice. The First World War, the Second World War. And for 80 good years, we've sustained this world without another war. And nobody wants another war again. So whatever it takes, or whatever it will take us as a people, from the east to the west, from the north to the south, for us to have a very peaceful Israel, a very peaceful Iran, that the Middle East must be very peaceful, and the people in Saudi Arabia can sleep and realize that replica effect of a conflict in Iran will not affect them. The people in Korea, in Kuwait can sleep. Even the people in America realize that if an American, I'm living outside America, I won't be seen as a threat. Because when hatred is directed towards your country, it affects every citizen, wherever you are. So Donald Trump can actually do things that will create enmity for every American across the world. And that is a very dangerous thing. That wherever you are as an American, people see you and they hate you because Trump has dictated the pace of the world in a way that the American has become an enemy to everybody. May we not get there. May we not get to a point where you see an Israeli anywhere and see that, look, Bibi has dictated the pace in the world to the point that every Israeli everywhere is an enemy. May we not get there. May we get to a point where everybody believes that it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, how developed you are as a nation. Bullets do not bring results. Bullets do not bring peace. And no bomb can bring development to any country. We will go to any point at any time in point. And then we'll come back to the round table and sit down and say, brother, I mean, we had our mistakes. From hindsight, we shouldn't have done what we did. But probably it caused a lot of damage. So let's say it's as it is. Peace in the Middle East. We must all advocate for it, irrespective of who is the aggressor and who is on the other side. On this note, I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourables. Well, a couple of comments that you're sending to us via Facebook. This is Babula Jamauli, who says, Iran has the right to defend itself. Iran didn't start the war they are defending. We all know it. Israel is a crime and a terrorist state. Nothing serious. Kamal Dokurugu Ibrahim says it's exciting to have Honorable Tubu Lanchin Peter on your panel, given his immense experience as a former police officer and a student of international policies. However, I respectfully disagree with his submission. There is no justification for Israel's aggression towards Iran, and not even Peter can defend what's going on. There's John Zamboni says, Mr. Tubu has spoken well. Allah bless you. Mr. Chris Price, you have patience for the discussion. I think he explained why he was making the intervention he made. King G. Bubu says, then there's this one which says, Baba Kankani says, I agree with Uncle Pratt. All the honorable submission is pro-Israel. I'm disappointed. There's Deyaro James says, great submission, son of Wawes. We are proud of you. There's Abdullah Babamo who says, Honorable Tobu is completely doing PR for the state of Israel. The world of today is discerning. There's Yusuf Mohammed, who is also joining us. Says, I still struggle to understand why some nations think they have the right to produce nuclear weapons to defend themselves, but other nations do not have the right. Now the question is, didn't other nations have the right to self-defense? Or the human rights laws has now turned to a spider web? You see, the world is not at peace because of US and Israel. Everything is clear now. These two countries are moving with colonial mindset. Superpower nations existed before, but today, are they still? So nations rise and fall. And so I see another nation falling. I believe in time. And so time will throw light, a lot more light on that. That's Vision in Tamale who sent that. Nasir Mohammed is also joining us. Says this Zionism at its worst is a very dangerous supremacist ideology that has taken over the Western world and managed to convince or force them to give them Palestine. They created a rogue state that has become the tail wagging the Western dog. The Zionists through very dubious means with state support of Israel, controls the West through Mossad and other secret setups. Israel has nuclear weapons and are not subject to IAEA inspections. Iran, thus developing its nuclear industry, is under pressure and inspection of IAEA. So who is the rogue nuclear state? Unfortunately, the Israelis can do anything and get away with it because the Zionists control America. I wish Iran well, but they are in a tight corner. If you just join us, we're discussing the Israel-Iran conflict. Anas?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I use this humble medium to say good morning to my senior colleagues and our viewers out there. And to make it clear that this is purely out of the question of religion. This is about humanity. This is about the quest for blood, the quest for destruction, the quest for the destruction of the Northern Hemisphere and for human civilization. It is a fight against genocide. It is a fight against war crime, the agents of genocide, the agents of war crimes and crimes against the humanity of the international system. Well, you know as well as I do that Trump made some comments that appear to be obscure, that appear to be ambivalent. And then when asked as to whether he will strike or he will join the Zionist regime in striking Iran, he said he may do it and he may not do it. And you know as well as I do that when you cast a glance at the international system as far as the conduct of war and morality is concerned, there are no, in the conduct of war, there are no obscure, there are no mysterious things that we have to believe without being allowed to subject them to a critical level of analysis, questions, and scrutiny. Well, Trump is said to have now made the plans or approved the plans to attack Iran. However, he is putting a hold on giving the go-ahead for the attacks. Why? Because he expects Iran to stop the attacks on the Zionist regime and to back off from attacking the Zionist regime and to surrender to its demands. What are those demands? To embark on a zero uranium enrichment as far as its civilian nuclear development program is concerned, and then to stop the stockpiling and then the production of state-of-the-art groundbreaking ballistic missiles in its military silos. These are demands that the Islamic Republic of Iran strongly rejected and vowed to fight to deny any potential or actual attacker its objective, to continue fighting to prevent the United States and the Zionist regime the prospect of an easy victory at a reasonable cost. Now, you know as well as I do that if you consider Trump's rhetoric, his threats on Iran, you realize that conversely, it is an indirect way of telling the Islamic Republic of Iran that Israel, the Zionist regime, is on the verge of total collapse. It is on the verge of total destruction. It is on the verge of being wiped out from the web of West Asia, from the map of West Asia. So it is a way of telling Iran that the Zionist regime cannot breathe. The Americans cannot breathe. Be sympathetic. Please, Iran, be sympathetic with the Zionist regime. Be compassionate. Be sympathetic with the Zionist regime. Because if you look at the timing of Trump's threat, you realize that we have reached a particular point in this open armed confrontation where Israel is reeling, where Israel is suffocating to death. And that was the point to which Donald Trump issued this threat. You cannot tell the elephant or you cannot tell the lion to back off from attacking the rabbit. Know very well that just within a twinkle of an eye, the rabbit will be nowhere to be found as far as existence is concerned. So it is an indirect way of urging Iran to stop attacking, what do you call it, the Zionist regime, because everything is clear. And I want to believe that if the clock were to turn around, there is no man of a woman born in the occupied territories that will dream of attacking the Islamic Republic of Iran, because they never anticipated the level of devastation, the level of barrage, the incredible barrage of missiles that Iran is raining on the Zionist regime. So I want to believe that before this open arm confrontation wanes, before everything subsides, the moral question that the United States and then the Zionist regime should be asking themselves is it, because right now what is considered undoable is to wipe out the Zionist regime on the surface of the map of West Asia. And then Iran too, what seems to be undoable is to try to overthrow or to turn Iran upside down. So the moral question that the United States or the hawks in the United States and in the Zionist regime should be asking themselves is that, is it ever morally acceptable to threaten to do the undoable, when the threat to do the undoable is what makes the undoable from being done? That is a moral question that the Zionist regime will be asking themselves after this particular war wins. And then, you know, one interesting thing, all these bravado, all these megalomania, all these hubris of the Zionist regime and then the United States as far as Trump is concerned, emanated, or the fundamental reason for which Israel cultivated this bravery to launch preemptive attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran is based on certain factors. The seeming neutralization of Hezbollah in Lebanon, because it appears that is according to the Zionists, it appears that they have succeeded in breaking the front of Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is no longer, or does no longer have the firepower to confront the Zionist regime. And then Hamas, they've been able to defeat Hamas, in quote. And then the Houthis in Yemen do not have that particular capacity to strike the Zionist regime, just like the way Hezbollah was. And then Assad, the overthrow of Assad in Syria, or the amalgamation of these important factors created a wrong signal in the minds of the Zionists that Iran is in its weakest position since its existence. So the opportune time to comprehensively strike the Islamic Republic of Iran to neutralize its nuclear civilian nuclear program, and then to effect regime change is now. Unfortunately, they launched an attack, and now they are running for cover. All the Israeli officials are hiding in bunkers, fortified bunkers, while the Iranian officials are roaming around in Tehran. So it is a clear-cut manifestation of the fact that Israel is on the verge of total defeat. And then the United States cannot sit and watch. So the only doable alternative is not to accept defeat explicitly. That is why Donald Trump is issuing these vague threats, knowing very well that if it enters into the war, it is going to end somewhere that it wouldn't possibly hope to repeat such actions again. And then the third factor is that Trump knows very well that the consequences of this war has the potential to evoke World War III, because we don't know where this, but that is why in international security we say war is a blunt instrument of justice. Because no matter your level of sophistication, no matter your level of military firepower, war does not occur, or war does not appear the way you want it to be. So, it is a clear-cut, it is an indirect way of telling the world that Israel is on the verge of defeat. Now, it appears that all what is happening in the Middle East at the moment has to do with the Iranian nuclear development program. And as we sit here, there are 9 nuclear weapon states in the world. That is the P5, the state of Pakistan, India, Israel, North Korea. So if you look at the historical antecedent on the origin and development of this particular issue, that is the Iranian nuclear development program. Prior to the revolution, there was a contract between Iran and the United States that led to the establishment of the Tehran nuclear research reactor. The reactor in Iran was built by the United States. And the United States was supplying uranium fuel to the weapon-grade uranium to Iran. It means if Iran wanted to, Iran should have been a nuclear power by now. Iran should have joined the nuclear club by now because the United States was supplying weapon-grade uranium to Iran. So when the revolution succeeded, the United States stopped supplying nuclear fuel to Iran. So Iran had to shut down its nuclear power plants. So after the revolution, Iran resurrected its peaceful nuclear program. And Iran was obtaining nuclear fuel from Argentina. So the same Zionists and the United States pressurized Argentina to stop supplying Iran with nuclear fuel. And you know as well as that the international system, one of the attributes characterizing the international system is that it is a self-help system. And Iran found out that since the development or the production of uranium fuel is an important sovereign necessity, then Iran had to devise means and ways. Iran had to master courage within the framework of its scientific and technological capacity to domestically produce nuclear fuel. So when the United States realized that, and then the Zionists realized that Iran wanted to be independent, self-independent in the production of uranium fuel, the United States then confronted Iran. Why do you want to produce? Why do you want to have nuclear energy when you have oil and gas? And Iran answered, if that particular question is something to go by, why does the United States have oil and gas yet it wants to have nuclear energy? And 25% of the U.S. electricity is coming from its nuclear plants. And then the United States said, yes, okay, nuclear energy for Iran is okay, but do not produce nuclear fuel. And Iran said, how can we enrich our nuclear power plants without obtaining nuclear fuel? It's just like building a university without lectures or without courses. So the United States said, yes, okay, we accept nuclear energy for Iran. We will provide you with nuclear fuel, 20% of nuclear fuel to enrich your uranium. Now, when Iran prepared to accept the nuclear fuel from the United States introduced another condition. We will provide you with 20% of uranium fuel. And you will give, when you enrich it into uranium, then you will give us 3.5% of your this enriched uranium. Look, this is antithetical to the provision of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And according to the NPT, any country that is in need of uranium fuel for civilian purposes, for the production of medical isotopes, and then for the generation of electricity, it is incumbent on the nuclear weapon states to aid such a country. So Iran was, Iran accepted, even though it is antithetical to the provision of the NPT. Iran accepted. When Iran accepted, Iran was again waiting for the, the supply of uranium fuel. And then all of a sudden there were threats coming from the United States. 5 scientists were eliminated through terrorist attacks, masterminded by the Zionist regime and in the United States of America. So as time, went by, Iran says, okay, if you do not supply us with uranium fuel, 20% to enrich our nuclear power plants, then we are going to produce 20% nuclear fuel. The then Foreign Minister of France, Bernard Kouchner, Thomas Kouchner, said Iran was bluffing. The technological and scientific capacity of Iran is not enough to make Iran domestically produce 20% of uranium enrichment. Then Iran produced 20% of nuclear fuel, and then enrich its uranium. And then they said Iran does not have the capacity to produce the research plate, and Iran showed the research plate. Here, Bush Jr. called for dialogue with Iran. And then they told Iran that, okay, Iran should come back and accept the previous agreement of accepting 20% nuclear fuel, and then giving back 3.5% of its enriched uranium. And then Iran accepted. To their dismay, Iran accepted. Now, when Iran prepared again to accept those, the 20% uranium fuel, there was one Iranian nuclear scientist by name Shahram Amiri. He went to Hajj, and he was circumambulating the Kaaba. All of a sudden, he was apprehended and then sent to Israel. From Israel, he was sent to the United States, and was tortured to reveal, to vomit all the nuclear secrets of the Islamic Republic. So he came back to Iran, and Iran had to execute him because he was able to vomit certain sensitive issues about the Iranian civilian nuclear development program to the enemy. So he was executed. Apart from the 5 extra nuclear scientists being eliminated by the United States and then the Zionist regime, and Iran exercised strategic patience. So even to the point that the United States had to help Israel to eliminate Qasem Soleimani just to please ISIS. Because it was clear that the United States officials themselves mentioned that they propped up ISIS. They recruited, they trained, they funded, they armed, and unleashed ISIS to effect regime change in in Syria. So that was the reason why Qasem Soleimani was eliminated. And Iran concealed patience. Till date, when the Zionist regime interpreted this strategic patience to be cowardice. And that is why I said by the time this war wanes, the Israeli regime will be asking questions. What even pushed us to attack Iran? Because it will, it will remain as a perpetual lesson, not only for the Zionist regime, for any superpower who will dream of attacking the Islamic Republic. So until 2015, when there was a joint comprehensive plan of action to scale down the the potential of Iran developing nuclear weapons, and that it was indeed a comprehensive pact. Because what interests me as far as the JCPOA was concerned was that in 2023, one of its provisions, in 2023, there was supposed to be an additional protocol that will allow Iran to unveil all the nuclear power plants for inspection. And in return, the United States and then the EU group of countries will also lift all sanctions, all the illegal sanctions imposed on the Iranian people. So if indeed the United States and the Zionist regime were sincere and really wanted Iran not to produce and stockpile nuclear warheads, the joint comprehensive plan of action was the key. But unfortunately, the entire world was satisfied with the JCPOA, except the Zionist regime, who pushed Donald Trump to walk away from the deal. And Donald Trump came in his second term and wanted to construct another deal with Iran. And that deal was that Iran, there should be a zero uranium enrichment to Iran's nuclear power plants. And this is absolutely antithetical to international law. It is antithetical to any provisions of the IAEA, the NPT, NPT, and so on and so forth. So we are at a critical, the world is at a crossroad, and we believe that war is not the answer. But here is the case. Iran is the only country in the West Asia that has never attacked any sovereign nation, but has always defended itself. The United States, in the lead up to the 1988 war between Iraq and Iran, the United States supported Iraq with air-based reconnaissance. The Germans supported Iran with chemical weapons. Iraq with chemical weapons. The British supported Saddam Hussein with chips and tanks. France supported with Mirage airplanes. And some of the Arab navies also supported on their own account, supported Iraq with billions of dollars worth in arms. But Iran came up to scratch. Iran stood and fought gallantly and then survived. So Iran is what you call it, a big fish to fry. And then I hope by now the Americans themselves, the hawks in America, will begin to understand that regime change and all what they call the exorbitant, demands that they want Iran to be, is a figment of their own imagination. And as far as I am concerned, no one is advocating for war. War is never the solution, but a situation where you are facing an existential threat from the agents of genocide, from the agents of mass murder, from the agents of war crimes and crimes against the humanity of the world. The only doable alternative is to stand and fight and succeed, and that is exactly what the Islamic Republic is doing. And we are of the conviction that what we are seeing is just the tip of an iceberg. The United States would have liked to comprehensively strike Iran, but the situation is that to comprehensively do that and succeed, you need a neighboring country to provide you with its air base, either its air base, sea base, or ground base, to comprehensively strike Iran. And here's the case: Iran has 12 neighboring countries, 6 by sea and 6 on land. And there is no any country that that will ever dream to offer the United States its air base to strike Iran, because Iran made it clear that it will raise that particular country to the ground. It will send that particular country to the Stone Age period. And looking at the incredible barrage of missiles that is raining on the Zionist regime, on the occupied territories, I don't think there is any neighboring country around Iran that is ready to supply its air base or sea base or ground base to the Zionists and then the United States to strike Iran. And that is a clear act of what? Mutual assured destruction. We are in a state of mad, and we are really in a mad situation. Iran has established a mad system, mutual assured destruction, and has stockpiled hundreds of thousands of ballistic missiles, ground-breaking missiles, that if the United States attempts to intervene in the war, it is going to be it's going to lead to the destruction of not only, it will surprise you that it will be the first time we will see the war being transferred from the West Asia into the shores of the United States of America. And that is what we don't want to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as Seydou Sando is an international affairs analyst and administrative secretary, Office of Shia Muslim Community, join us and sharing his thoughts on our very first discussion that has to do with the Israel-Iran conflict. Mr. Pratt?
First and foremost, I think it's important for us to appreciate that the world is at a very, very dangerous place. The estimate is that 9 countries in the world have acquired the power to destroy this world, this earth, 10 times over. Now, to destroy the world once is an unimaginable catastrophe. But to destroy it 10 times over, I don't know how to describe it. So for all who want the preservation of our civilization, for all who want the preservation of life and so on, our duty is to strive for peace. And in striving for peace, we have a commitment to ensure that not just the proliferation of nuclear weapons, but the production of nuclear weapons everywhere is stopped. That's the commitment that we need to have. Now, having said this, I think it's important to remind Donald Trump and his friends and so on that we are no longer in 1452, when the Pope sat in Rome and signed a law authorizing King Alfonso of Portugal to invade the world and to convert all of us to Christianity. And that those who failed or refused to be converted should be killed, their wives seized, and their properties, taken from them and so on. We are not in that era. We are not in 1884, when Otto von Bismarck invited his fellow European leaders and they sat in Bonn, put the map of Africa on the table, used pencils and drew lines to create their spheres of influence. We've passed that stage. We have actually passed the stage where the king of Belgium could claim the whole of the Congo as his personal property. We've passed that stage. And we've certainly passed 1948. When Lord Balfour cut Palestine into two and gave part of Palestine for the establishment of the state of Israel. Now, I think it's instructive for us to go back into history. You see, when the Second World War ended and the Western countries, out of their own desire, to make good what they had done to the Jews and so on, decided to create the state of Israel, a number of places were considered for the establishment of the state of Israel. One of those places is modern-day Uganda. Modern-day Uganda was considered as a place for the establishment of the state of Israel. Argentina was also considered for the establishment of the state of Israel. And then eventually, they decided, because the British had mandate over Palestine, to give part of Palestine for the establishment of the state of Israel. Now, this history must not be lost on us. It's a very important history. This is the history that belies the claim that Palestine is land which was bequeathed to the Zionists by God. What about Uganda? What about Argentina and so on? This history is a history that we ought to remember. Now, what we are discussing today is not just the attack on Iran by an apartheid occupationist force. That's what we are discussing. We are discussing the whole architecture of West Asia and the Middle East. We are discussing the right of a people to govern themselves without interference. And we are discussing the equality of nations, the principles which underline the equality of nations and so on. For anybody to glorify Israel at this time must amount not just to total recklessness, but complete disregard for the values of humanity. Listen, as we speak now, 70,000 Palestinians, 2/3 of whom are women and children, have been slaughtered in cold blood in Gaza. Don't lose sight of that fact. 70,000 Palestinians, 2/3 of them, women and children, have been slaughtered in Gaza. Last night, I was watching television. I was watching CNN. I wasn't watching Al Jazeera. I was watching CNN. What is happening? The Israelis have taken over the distribution of relief items and so on to these Palestinians who have been displaced, whose homes have been bombed, whose schools have been destroyed, and so on. So they've created centers for the distribution of aid. And then when information goes out that there is food at these centers, and the Palestinians start trooping to the centers to go and take food and water, they open fire on them. Who can justify this? Innocent and armed Palestinians rushing for food and water, they open fire on them and kill them. And sometimes 70 people a day, sometimes 100 people a day, and so on. Who can justify this? Now, that is not all. I want to just a few examples. You see, Palestinians who lost their homes, who were victims of the Nakba, and so 1948, and so who are refugees in other countries, have no right of return to their homeland. Palestinians, they have no right of return to their homeland. But anybody anywhere in the world, in Ghana, in Afghanistan, in Togo, anywhere, who claims to be a Jew has automatic right of return to Palestine. Does that make sense to you? That Palestinians who are exiled as a result of Nakba and so on are not allowed to return to their homeland. But anybody anywhere in the world can be a national of Germany, can be a national of Czechoslovakia, anywhere, who claims to be a Jew has automatic right of return. Does that make sense? Now, we are talking about the possibility, and here we are talking about the possibility of Iran making a nuclear bomb, producing a nuclear bomb. Possibility. Because even the Israeli Prime Minister himself says that Iran is only a few months, sometimes it's a few weeks away from producing a bomb. That's what he says. That's the allegation. Okay. Now, be it as it may, Iran has signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran's nuclear facilities are subject to inspection by the International Atomic Energy Agency. They are inspecting Iran's, nuclear facility and so on. They are inspecting it on a constant basis. They issue reports on a regular basis and so on. They haven't produced a nuclear weapon yet. Israel admits that they haven't produced a nuclear weapon yet. Israel has produced a nuclear weapon, has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And if you remember, in the late 1960s or 1970s, an Israeli who was working on the nuclear facility actually disclosed to the world what Israel was doing. You remember? You will remember. He was arrested, imprisoned, put in solitary confinement, and so on. After so many years, he was released. The first time he granted an interview, he was locked back in. This is an Israeli citizen. Okay? Israeli citizen. In fact, the estimates now, the last time I checked last night, the estimates now, that Israel has 90 nuclear warheads. 90, not one. 90 nuclear bombs. The last time I checked, yesterday, 90. Iran has none. Now, if you are looking for an irresponsible state in the Middle East, is it Iran or is it Israel? The record of Israel is there for everybody. The United Nations, not me, not Iran, not Palestine. The United Nations has declared Israel as an apartheid state. Apartheid state. What does that mean? Simply put, it means that Israel has separate laws which govern the life of Israelis and separate laws which govern the lives of Arabs, even Israeli Arabs. You understand? It is an apartheid state. It's a racist state. Now, it is significant, and again, I checked yesterday, and you can Google now, that 70% of Israeli citizens are opposed to the war in Gaza. 70%. 70% of Israeli citizens are opposed to the war. Okay? So, for those of you who like to talk about democracy and how Israel is a democratic state and so on, when 70% of the population is opposed to the war in Gaza, and the government is doing what it's doing against the will of the people, how is that democratic? How is that a democratic state? I cannot understand. Now, statements made by Israeli officials themselves are very clear on this matter. You know, the Israeli Minister of Defense, 2 days ago, granted an interview in which he said that the spiritual leader of Iran has lost his right to exist. I'm sure you are all familiar with that. That he has no right to exist. Which in other words means that he must be assassinated. Okay. The Israeli Prime Minister was asked on Israeli national television his reaction to what his defense minister has said. The Israeli Prime Minister's response was that nobody, no Iranian, must be granted immunity from death. Benjamin Netanyahu, he says no Iranian must be granted immunity from death. I mean, if this is not a declaration of genocidal intent, what else can be a declaration of genocidal intent? That 90 million people should be wiped out. This is Benjamin Netanyahu's own words and so on. Now, for me, one of the other most interesting things is simply the fact that the Iranian nuclear program was started by the United States of America. The technology, the equipment, everything was provided by the United States of America when the Shah was in charge. Okay? So America's objection to Iran producing nuclear power and so on is not because there's any problem with the production of nuclear power, but who is in charge? They don't like who is in charge. If the Shah were there, America would have had no problem because America started that project. Okay? Now, I have had the privilege of visiting Iran many times. You understand? And I'm quite sure that my brother here, the Honorable Member of Parliament, perhaps has not visited Iran. I mean, I can say on authority that I know most parts of Iran like the back of my hand. And his description of the situation in Iran is a far cry from the reality in Iran. You see, Western analysts and so on make a lot of noise about the discrimination of women in Iran. Now, when they talk about the discrimination of women in Iran, what are they talking about? They are saying that Iranian women are not free to walk about without veils. If I lie, tell me. That's the main argument that they make. Now, anybody who has been to Iran or anybody who has encountered Iranian women would know, unlike other places in the Middle East and West Asia and so on, Iranian women wear their scarves halfway. You know, the scarf starts from somewhere here and goes back and so on. So their front is normally revealed. It is very rare to find Iranian women who are fully covered. But me, that's not even the issue. You understand? The issue is this. Today, in Iran, more women graduate from the universities than men. How many countries in the world have more women graduating from the universities than men? Is that not also about human rights? who has access to education and so on. Is that not a human right, issue and so on? Not just that. The first woman ever to win the Nobel Prize for mathematics was who? An Iranian woman. Okay? So you counterbalance that with the condition of women in the United States of America and the condition of women in France and the condition of women in Britain. And if you're a Ghanaian woman, which one would you accept? That you are free to leave your hair and you are denied access to education? That you are free to leave your hair and you are denied access to employment? You are free to leave your hair uncovered and is discriminated against when it comes to appointments and so on. So you weigh the two. I would prefer a situation where women enjoy all the rights that women ought to enjoy. But those who criticize Iran for discrimination against women have no such right, because the condition of women in their countries are far worse than the condition of women in Iran. And I think that this point must be amplified very, very clearly. Now, there's something which just beats me completely. Israel claims that it has launched this war to destroy Iran's capacity for producing a nuclear bomb. That's the claim. Not so. So Israel launches the war, and the second day after launching the war, admits that it has no capacity. Israel admits that it has no capacity to destroy Iran's nuclear facility. And that the only country which can destroy Iran's nuclear facility is the United States of America. And then he starts appealing to the US to join them. Wow. Massa, they themselves are claiming that they launched the war to stop Iran from developing the capacity. They have launched the war finish, so they launched the war finish. Then they turn and say, we don't have that capacity. If America doesn't come to our aid, we will not be able to achieve that objective. What does that tell you? Massa, what does that tell you? What that tells you simply is that this is a reckless adventure. Complete reckless adventure. Okay? Now, if you watch the United States under Trump is using Israel, Israel's attack on Iran, as a bargaining chip. Israel go and attack them, weaken them, so that they will come to the negotiation table. That's all. What does the US want from the negotiating table? That is even confused. First, the United States of America and its Western allies sat down with Iran and negotiated the JCPOA. You understand? They negotiated it. All of them, with their nuclear experts, the international relations experts and so on, sat with Iran and agreed that this agreement, we believe, will not make it possible for you to develop nuclear weapons and to use it recklessly and so on. They all agreed. They signed the agreement, the JCPOA agreement, they signed. When they finished, and Donald Trump became president, Donald Trump alone then decided that the agreement should be cancelled. The Western countries were not happy with Donald Trump because they believed that that was the best frame which could be created and so on. So between the United States and the Western countries, there was a gulf. Okay? Then Joe Biden came to power and so on, and somehow he didn't have the nerve to reverse the Donald Trump situation, and it persisted and so on. And then Donald Trump came back to power. Donald Trump comes to power and says, we still want to negotiate. The Iranians said, no problem, let's negotiate. They started negotiations. They have had 4 rounds of negotiations. Israel attacked on Friday or Saturday. The next round of negotiations was to take place on Sunday to seal the deal. They have been talking about what to do, the framework to have for Iran's development of nuclear energy and so on. One day more to the conclusion of the talks, Israel attacks. Who can justify this? Who in his right mind or her right mind can justify this attack? One day before the negotiations are concluded. So clearly this attack was intended to destroy the possibility of an agreement. Clearly intended to destroy the possibility of an agreement. Now, let's look around the world and so on. Let's look around the world and see, you know. You see, those who are criticizing Iran, those who think that Iran is a power state and so on, they must look at themselves first. My brother, listen, these countries which are lining up behind Israel, these are the same countries who went into the Congo, staged a coup d'etat, arrested the democratically elected president of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, killed him, and 2 weeks ago, the intelligence officer who led that operation confessed that he cut Patrice Lumumba's body into 34 parts, removed his front teeth as a souvenir, and dissolved his body. The body of the democratically elected prime minister of the Congo was dissolved in acid. What moral authority can they have? What moral authority can they have? These countries which are lining up behind, Israel, the United States of America. The United States of America is the only country in the world which has used a nuclear bomb. It used it twice, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki continue to suffer the consequences of that recklessness. Has Iran ever used a nuclear bomb? Or even just an ordinary dirty bomb? The US has used it twice in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Where is the moral authority of the US today to be pontificating to us and so on? Where is the moral authority? You see, and for those of you who think that this is a religious conflict, okay, and that because you are Christian, you must necessarily support Israel, please read the Bible again and check your facts. First of all, if you see all the videos of the protests in the United States against the genocide that Israel is committing in Gaza, you find Jewish rabbis in the forefront of the anti-Israel demonstrations. And my brother, that is where I come to you. You claim that this gentleman sitting here, by religion, is a Muslim, is a Shia Muslim, and therefore should not have been on the program, should have brought a Jew. The majority of Jews are opposed to the genocide that Israel is committing. The majority of Jews are leading demonstrations in Western Europe and in the United States of America against what the Zionist regime is doing. So there's no guarantee that if you bring a Jew here, he will say anything different from what any one of us is saying. There's no such guarantee. And to believe that the mere presence of a Jew on this panel will change things is to misunderstand the situation in Israel. Okay? So first of all, you have 70% of the Israeli population opposed to war with Palestine. You have the vast majority of Jews in the world opposed to the genocide that Israel is committing, and so on. Now, let us be clear. Let us be clear. Any study of African history and African struggle for liberation and freedom will reveal that Israel has been against us from the very beginning until now. The Israeli intelligence agency was a collaborator of the apartheid intelligence agency in South Africa. In fact, the arrest of Nelson Mandela was coordinated between apartheid intelligence, the US intelligence, and Israeli intelligence. No doubt at all about that. 3 days ago, videos came out of Israelis running into the bomb shelters. And I'm sure that perhaps all of you have seen those videos. Black people who live in Israel, who were also running into the shelters to protect their lives, were prevented from entering the shelters. They were prevented from entering the shelters. So if you're an African, and you want to support what is happening in Israel, something must be wrong with you. 20 years ago, a story emerged of a gentleman, a child actually from Ethiopia, a Falan, what do they call them, who had died in Israel. And they could not find a burial place for him because he was black. Jew, he was a Jew, but he was black. They couldn't find a burial place for him because he was from Ethiopia. This is a big story which made the headlines all over the world. So if you're an African and you support this carnage, something must be wrong with you. If you're an African and you support this carnage, something must be wrong with you. Even burial grounds are denied to the African people. Now listen, and Honorable, I heard you say, for example, that as for us, we are living in peace. After this program, we walk down and walk to our cars and so on. Honorable, you completely misunderstand the world situation. You completely misunderstand it. As a result of what is happening, this aggression that Israel is waging against Iran, our government has decided to suspend the implementation of the levy imposed on fuel, which would have enabled us to retire $4 billion worth of debt in the power sector. Do you know the implications of that? The implications of that is that this country may, at a later time, not be able to produce electricity. That means the collapse of our industries, the collapse of our educational institutions, the collapse of our hospitals and everything. So what is happening may appear to be between Israel and Iran, but has devastating consequences on us. And in any case, the nuclear scientists tell us that if they manage to find the right weaponry and attack the nuclear facility at Fudan, the environmental consequences would affect everybody in the world. Every nation in the world will suffer. So it is not true that we are insulated from what is happening there. The consequences would affect us. And that is why it is important for us to speak loudly and clearly that this nonsense must stop. That no nation is superior. That the sovereignty of one nation is not inferior to the sovereignty of another nation, and so on. We must insist upon that. Now, you see, people talk about the right of Israel to exist, and so on. Now, when you're talking about the right of Israel, what geographical dimension are you talking about? Which country is Israel? Israel is the only country in the world which has no fixed borders. You want to challenge that? The only country in the world which has no fixed borders. Every day, every week, every month, every year, it keeps expanding its borders. You understand? So when you're talking about the state of Israel, what is that geographic entity you are referring to? Because as we speak, the Israelis have a plan to annex part of Gaza and add to their territory. As we speak. And this whole thing that is happening in Ghana is about the annexation of more land. Clear, they've said that clearly, they want more land to expand the state of Israel. You understand? Is this something which we should accept? Look, Israel has killed more journalists than have been killed in any war in history. That's also a fact. That's a fact. They've killed more journalists than have been killed in any war in history. They deliberately attack journalists and kill them. And the impunity. And they do it, they don't even hide. They do it so openly and so on. You see, for those of you who support this Zionist regime and so on, I mean, I can't help but pity you. Last week, did you read the statement which was made by the Israeli ambassador in Ghana? How did you feel when you read that statement? Has no respect for our government. Honorable, he has no respect for your government. He has no respect for your president. The Israeli ambassador to Ghana actually calls the press and tells the press that he's disappointed in the government of Ghana. He's disappointed in the government of Ghana. What is the basis of his disappointment? One, that our government pursues a non-aligned policy. And as far as the Israeli ambassador is concerned, Ghana should not be a non-aligned state. And that Ghana should defer the non-aligned movement. What effrontery. He doesn't end there. This Israeli ambassador says that he knows that Ghana belongs to the African Union. But we should not listen to the African Union. We should break ranks to the African Union. What impunity? What arrogance? And then he goes on and says we should have nothing to do with the Arab League and so on. This natty Israeli ambassador in Accra wants to dictate to President Mahama how he should run his foreign policy, how he should run his government. He feels emboldened. He's so big, he's bigger than Mahama, he's bigger than the NDC, he's bigger than our parliament and so on. And you want to support this? Unbelievable. And this arrogance finds expression in everything they do. This belief that they are specially chosen by God is the fundamental thing when it comes to Israeli policy. In any case, SENA, let me say something. SENA, look, the Israelis, not all the Israelis, I mean the Zionists who are in power in Israel, have constantly been insulting God. Take it from me, they have constantly been insulting God. They claim that God created all of us, and after creating all of us, decided to select this small number of Zionists in Israel as his chosen people against the rest of us. Don't you think that that's an insult to God? I mean, what kind of a God will create the world and all its people, including Filipinos, including Argentines, including Brazilians, including Arabs, including Zulus, and so on, Fantis and Ashantis, and so on. And after creating this beautiful mosaic of people and so on, decide that I will support only a small number of them, less than 10 million of them. They are the people I will support against the rest. What kind of God is that? That God must be very partial. That God must be very unfair. So if you believe in this theory of the chosen people, that is how you think. If you believe in this theory of the chosen people, you are insulting God. You think that God is partial, God is not fair, and so on. Think about it. In any case, all those of you who every now and then want to go to Israel for religious pilgrimage and so on, SENA, do you know the birthplace of Jesus, where Jesus was actually born? Do you know that it is not in the modern day Israel? It's in Palestine. So Jesus was Palestinian. Jesus the Christ was Palestinian. He was not an Israeli, he was Palestinian. You understand? Not just that. The Church of Nativity, that is the church which was built on the manger where Jesus was born. It's in Palestine. Do you know something? Pope Francis, before he died, the Pope who recently died, was on telephone call on a daily basis with Gaza. Go and check. Expressing his solidarity with Gaza and so on. Why? There are more Christians in Palestine than there are in Israel. More Palestinians are Christian than Israelis are. This is a fact. You understand? And indeed, there are a lot more Muslims who are citizens of Israel. So this whole confusion and so on, where is it coming from? It comes from ignorance. Ignorance of the facts. Ignorance of religion. Those who read the Bible upside down, they read the Bible upside down and come to all kinds of unrealistic conclusions and so on. But you see, SENA, we don't have all day. We don't have all day. So let me say that war has consequences. And one of the consequences of war is untold suffering, usually for the vulnerable, not the powerful people, not the people in power. You understand? One of war's consequences is suffering of the vulnerable people in our societies and so on. So, to the extent that it is possible, we must do everything possible to avert war. This particular war has been said by the Secretary General of the United Nations, has been said by all the prominent leaders of the world, can lead to a thermonuclear third world war, whose consequences will be felt by everybody in the world. This particular reckless war that Israel has started can lead to a thermonuclear third world war. This war has already started affecting our pockets and our well-being and so on. We must do everything possible to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible. And the way to do that is to call a spade a spade. The way to do that is to organize massive solidarity with the victims of this aggression. The way to do that is to end Israeli aggression everywhere. The way to do that is to struggle for the restoration of the rights of the Palestinian people. The way to do that is to support the two-state solution that the whole world, including the United Nations, agrees is the way forward. Now listen, why? Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin sat down and to the displeasure of many people and so on, signed the Oslo Accord, which guaranteed the establishment of an independent state of Israel with security guarantees, alongside the establishment of an independent state of Palestine with security guarantees and so on. The solution to the problem was found by Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel. What happened after that? People like Benjamin Netanyahu and hawks in Israel killed Yitzhak Rabin. They killed Yitzhak Rabin to destroy that agreement which would have saved the situation. We are here because Israeli hawks killed Ishaq Rabin because they didn't want a two-state solution. Recently, Benjamin Netanyahu said that the two-state solution would never happen. It would be over his dead body and so on. They killed Ishaq Rabin. They killed their own prime minister because he was voting for peace and so on. Now, if they can kill their own prime minister because he was looking for peace, who can they not kill? Let us be realistic. This war must come to an end as quickly as possible. And the way to bring this war to an end is to stop the aggressor. And the aggressor in this case is the Zionist state of Israel. Nobody else.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll do a few comments and then we'll have to move on to the next topic because, like I said, we do not actually have time. But I just have to do a few comments. This is Honorable Bolo, who's assembly member for Battle. Says Israel should stop being dogmatic. War with Iran should not be an option. For the USA, they're already thinking of aggravating the situation. We need peace. Then there's this one which is from NS Evalov Kwashi, who says, in a region plagued by conflict and complex histories, the leaders of Israel have often chosen war drums over wisdom and showmanship over statesmanship. At the heart of it lies a chronic case of misplaced priorities. Instead of channeling national strength into diplomacy, development, and coexistence, the state has been consumed with aggressive expansionism, military dominance, and political theatrics that satisfy the egos of a few while dragging millions into endless tension and antagonism. That is NS Evalov Kwashi. There's Dr. Akofa Segbefia who says, you recall that America attacked Iraq even after the intelligence community was emphatic that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. Today, the IAEA says there's no evidence of Iran having nuclear weapons, yet Iran has come under attack. Remember, Mordecai Vanunu, an Israeli scientist, revealed that Israel has nuclear weapons. Now, I am convinced beyond every reasonable doubt that Israel's enterprise in Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran is only for the political survival of one man, Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu's intelligence is unfathomable. That's coming from him. There's also Tafa in Amrahia, who says, good morning. He said, I want to use this, your important platform, to condemn the act of barbarism, killing of innocent women and children of Islam, Republic of Iran. I'm also condemning those Arab countries who grant their airspace for the Zionists to use and troop their bombs on innocent women and children. Americans pretend they are not involved, but we are not fools. They should tell that to their Marines. Thank you, Tafa, who sent that message. Musa Abatwa is also joining us. So let's call a spade and not a big spoon. Uncle Kwesi is absolutely right. The chaos, bloodshed, and destruction we are witnessing in the Israel-Iran conflict is deeply rooted in American interests and double standard. It's disturbing how some nations are given a green light to possess nuclear weapons while others are warned, sanctioned, or even threatened for the same. The same bandwagon propaganda strategy America used to justify the invasion of Iraq is now being redeployed against Iran. We must speak truth to power and resist the hypocrisy that continues to destabilize regions. Thank you. And this is Seidu, who is also joining us. Mr. Netanyahu has long wanted to fight. Quote, this is a quote from former President Bill Clinton. He says, quote, Mr. Netanyahu has long wanted to fight Iran because that way he can stay in office forever and ever. But I think we should be trying to diffuse it. And I hope President Trump will do that. I hope anybody there will do that. We've got to convince our friends in the Middle East that we'll stand with them and try to protect them. By choosing undeclared wars in which the primary victims are civilians who are not politically involved, one way or the other, just want to live decent life is not a very good solution. Do I think that we have to try to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon? I do. I tried at that and we had some success, but we don't have to have all this outright constant killing of civilians who can't defend themselves. And they just want a chance to live. That's a quote that I sent from me. And it says, population makeup of Israel, Jews 73.2%, Muslim 18%, Christian 1.9%. Well, Thank you. And I'm conclude with the thoughts of David SENA, who says, Mr. Pratt's contribution has been very insightful. Thanks to him. Let the world know that no one's blood is purer than the other person's. We want peace in the world. If you just join us, we're having a discussion on the Israel-Iran conflict that's still ongoing. Well, there are attempts to try to find a solution to the problem. The challenge is the U.S. And the challenge will continue to be the U.S. because Donald Trump is president. Well, let's move on to another discussion and come to Ghana about the new Patriotic Party. We've been discussing them for some time. The latest is the decision to hold primaries on January 31, 2026, even before they go and do the elections of the polling station executive, constituency executive, regional executives, and national executives. So the current executives will choose a flag bearer for the party, then go for elections. Well, I'll start from my immediate left with Honorable Tobo. Honorable.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think that as we get into local politics, I'm happy that me and my big brother Kwesi Pratt has finally landed on a single point. There must be peace. And whatever it is, insecurity anywhere in the world is a threat to the peace and security everywhere. That I agree with him. Bro, when we talk about Ghana's politics, since the return of this country to democratic rule in 1992, after we promulgated the 1992 Constitution, the two key parties that emerged and has remained so to date is the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party. They presented their first presidential candidate. That was Professor Albert Adubuahi. And he lost woefully. They never repeated him. And they brought in President Kufuor, who was actually third on the list when Albert Adubuahi was the presidential candidate. In that contest, he placed third. Gianni Selvi was second. Coming around, President Kufuor won the election on his second attempt. They brought the third candidate, President Nana Dankwa-Akufo-Addo, who just left. He won the presidency on his third attempt. So if you look at the trend, what it means is that their next presidential candidate, who happens to be Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia in the last elections, that they want to repeat, if they want to go by that trend, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia can win Ghana's election in his fourth attempt. And the truth is, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was placed as a card to be played to satisfy a particular philosophy that they are pushing, that their party is a national party. It was of late that they added the NOMBO to the Buzia Kampa. And in trying to sanitize the situation, they said, oh, the Buzia people had won before, the Danko people have won before. It's now left with the NOMBO. So let's make him presidential candidate so that we can have the history right that, listen, even somebody from the NOMBO side ever led the party. But they knew in their heart that the mess that they created for 8 years, the horror movie that Ghanaians were compelled to watch for 8 years, there was no way, irrespective of who was the presidential candidate of the MPP, that they could win elections. And because of that clarity, they placed Bawumia under the train, and he went by it. Today, what they are simply doing is that they are very clear in their minds that after 2028, with what President Mahama has started doing, and the fact that my brother Dr. Ayini is on course with oral, 2028 is nothing to dream about for them. So let's repeat him, so that it will be convincing to the Ghanaian people that after a Northerner in the MPP, you cannot lead the MPP to power. So that at the end of the day, he will be taken off forever, and they'll look for a new candidate. Justifiable so. So for me, what they are doing is to ensure that the establishment candidate for 2024 is repeated. Excuse me, who elects a presidential candidate? We start from the grassroots, go from the branches to the constituency, to the region, to national, and at the end of the day, the last point is to elect a presidential candidate. From all these changes, who were those who elected Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia for the last elections? They are the ones who are still there. So it means that if they want to repeat the election without any change from the grassroots, they are likely to get the same result, that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia will lead. So let's jump the gun and use the same people to confirm Bawumia as the presidential candidate for 2028 before we start to begin to change from the grassroots. I have never seen a human being working with the head. And I'm surprised that JFK will lead the party as a general secretary and will proffer this kind of solution to restructure a very collapsed party, the MPP. What they have done in 8 years, the level of corruption that we've witnessed, the level of impunity that we've witnessed, the level of arrogance that we've seen in 8 years, the disregard and disrespect for the Ghanaian people who voted for them. I am wondering, instead of them to begin to restructure the party from the base, they are thinking of maintaining the status quo and ensuring that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia will continue to lead them. I don't have a problem. If he leads, it makes the work easier for us. But for us as the NDC, what we just need to do is ensure that President John Dramani Mahama succeeds. And whoever becomes the candidate, the name will not matter. Where the person comes from will not matter. What will matter is that the track record of the party in government and the track record of President John Dramani Mahama will carry the NDC into the next election and will be victorious. What the MPP is doing, honestly speaking, we've done politics for some time. Whether it's at the student level, at the national level, or it's even the theory. I don't know which book is guiding them. Even if it's a political theory, I don't know which book they're reading to guide them. That what they intend to do is by 31st of January 2026, they will have presidential primaries. Because they just want to be sure that my good brother and former chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament, that's the 8th Parliament, Honorable Kennedy Japan, will stop worrying them. So they want a leader now, so that everybody will go silent, and they will see if they can use that leader to rebuild the party in the next 3 years to be able to contest elections. But the truth is that if they take their time to rebuild the party from scratch, and agree that they've messed up this country for 8 years, and agree that Ghanaians are very angry with them. Now agree that Ghanaians are not thinking about voting for the MPP probably in the next 20 years at least. And what you need to do is convince Ghanaians and tell them you are sorry. We are sorry for what we've taken you through in 8 years. We are sorry for all the things that Ghana has gone through in 8 years. We are sorry for the haircuts. We are very, very sorry for the high inflation rate. In fact, we are very sorry for the pain that you've gone through with all these hikes in fuel prices. And we are sorry for deceiving you, that we presented a candidate saying that this was incorruptible, that at his age he doesn't need money for anything. He was going to protect the public purse. We are very sorry that we presented a different picture. And actually what we acted in contrast with what we presented to you. Forgive us. And after the forgiveness stage, you begin to see if you can rebuild your party. And if you rebuild the party and rebrand it, and probably in the near future, in the next 20 years, you can present the candidate and Ghanaians will say probably the NDC has also stayed in power for too long. Because when you're in power for too long, sometimes it attracts a bit of arrogance. But of course, what they are doing is their party. I don't attend NEC meetings with them. I'm not their party person. But I have friends in there. You speak to many of the MPs and they'll tell you, listen, we don't actually know what is going on. But the truth is that as for 2028, it's survival of the fittest. People want to stay in parliament for the future. They are not thinking about the presidential candidate. And they are not thinking about winning elections. Because before we finish with oral, and you know, the secret is that if they are able to get a presidential candidate in 2026, they will bring a lot of pressure to bear on government, such that attention will shift away from oral. But if you are able to recover a lot of stolen funds, and we are able to prosecute and succeed in getting people into prison, and let the law work, let the law be that supreme as we believe it to be, I am very convinced that it doesn't matter the speed they want to take to come back to power. They can only crash. Because with that kind of speed, with that accuracy, you can only crash. How can you come back to power so soon? How do you look into the face of Ghanaians and think that, oh, just yesterday we left, but we want to come back? Come and do what? For 8 good years you had Ghana in your hands. And what you've left for us as a legacy, the pain in our heart, the anger that is still in our hearts, You are not even coming apologizing. You are walking in our face, trying to bring a new presidential candidate with speed so that you think about the presidency. Maybe it's not about Ghana. If it's about Ghana, they will have to re-strategize. I'm not getting the strategy very clear. But the only thing I know is that they want to get a leader in time, because their party is now leaderless. And in that leaderless position, my good friend, the minority leader, Honorable Afenyo Markins, he's carrying so much weight. Yesterday I met him in the chamber. I said, bro, I love your tenacity. I love your energy. But I'm so sad that you don't have direction. He looked at me and said, we are where you are now. One day you will be where I am. And we smiled and I walked away. The truth is that Honorable Afenyo Markins is now providing leadership. And they want a leader at the party level. They say, this is our presidential candidate. And the person they're pushing for, it's so easy for the NDC to go and smile and say, we will do the best that we can. But we are going to win the next election not by campaigning. We are going to win the next election by showing results. By telling the Ghanaian people what we've done in 4 years. And telling them that we promised and we delivered. And telling them that the 2024 manifesto, we are giving you a better Ghana. Okay. The Ghana that you deserve. We have done the best that we can. Do the comparison. And you'll see that the National Democratic Congress remains the only viable political party in this country that can move this country from grace to grace and from point to point. And we are moving forward towards the desired state. We are moving the Ghanaian people to where we ought to be, not necessarily where we want to be. And under President John Dramani Mahama, I believe that the reset is on, and we are on course.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable Member of Parliament for Wa West. Let me just do, so this is from Kojochu Murafo, says, and I just to add to Angokwesi's point, the modern state of Israel is a Judaic state. It is not a Christian state. Indeed, the crucifixion of Jesus happened because he called himself the child of God against the dictates of Judaism. That's why the Bible has the Old Testament and the New Testament. There's this one which says, Mr. Host, Evalov again says, the New Patriotic Party is an unpopular political decision to hold early presidential primaries on January 31, 2026. It's a recipe for further internal bickering, battery, and political tsunami. This decision would deepen the seeming disunity, apathy, and rancor amongst the rank and file of the party. The Council of Elders who took this premature political decision will one day suffer the deleterious consequences of this unilateral decision born out of bad faith and ill-conceived thoughts. Yeah.
There's one topic I don't like discussing about NPP.
And please be brief for me. Be as brief as you can.
You can have my time.
If there's one topic I don't like discussing is the NPP. I used to be there against a judgment. Because I recall that having grown up in the CPP house and having heard in the view of my father what fuels the public in the NPP coalition, as he was reviewed that they've never really been aligned to the Ghana agenda, and that it was, for them, it was all about using the political party as a vehicle to perpetuate their personal agenda, being overly idealistic to my center-right leanings. I said to go there, and having witnessed a radical departure. Should I even say a departure? Whether or not they even believed in the so-called ideals in the first place. Having left, really, I don't enjoy talking about them. But in the interest of the country, we need to talk about them. Because when you take our 1992 constitution, where Ghanaians took upon us as a framework that was meant to guarantee for us the rule of law, we agreed that one of the key actors in that endeavor should be the political parties, because the political parties have a special role to play, and that role is in helping foster that right political culture that would tolerate diverse views, would hold political leadership accountable, and guarantee for us the rule of law. because that's the only way, that's the only means by which we can fulfill the purpose of the Constitution. Now, over the past few years, and thankfully, I've said it on not necessarily just here, but on various platforms in Pan-African TV. You see, when you take a political party, what keeps the political party like us human beings is your spirit, is your soul. And the spirit and soul of a political party, one is your values and principles, and to what keeps you aligned is to understand that the reason why you are being formed as a political party in the first place is to advance the agenda of the state. So I know that people say that, look, the essence of a political party is to win power. Yes, but your essence is to win power towards a greater call, and that greater call is to give governance that aligns to the interest of the nation. You understand? So that your ultimate essence as a political party is to answer the question, what is in the best interest of the country? Now, the MPP over the past 8 years showed that their interest, their focus is not in what is in the best interest of the country. Because having sponsored a president and taking into consideration the kind of system we practice here, which is a presidential system, I know we say that it is hybrid, but when you critically analyze our constitution, we vote for a president. So the president is, once you become president, you are president over the entire country, not just president over your party. And once we have a president, it's also the duty of the political party to ensure that the president they sponsored grants leadership which aligns to the national agenda. Now, over the past 8 years, when His Excellency Donaldo was delivering a governance system, was delivering leadership which was adverse to our collective interest, was making statements which was undermining the integrity of the system we created. Statements like, if you don't vote for my MP, then I'm going to derelict my duty towards you, like he did in what's called a Konfi, and also in Edreso. When he went to Mepe and said that he was not supposed to come there. When Anado appointed people who were perceived to be MPP members onto the EC, that's undermining the institutions that we created to guarantee for us the purpose of our constitution. The party kept quiet. In fact, the party enabled him. They didn't say anything. The party enabled him, and Anado delivered a leadership that's beyond destroying our economy. Attacked the very institutions that were meant to guarantee for us the purpose, the reason why we took upon ourselves this a constitution. So right now, the NDP is made up of people who don't believe in their so-called ideals. Because we can have a debate about ideals. So see, the issue with the NPP is not for us to have a debate about ideals, whatever they say they claim the ideals are. But in my opinion, in my honest opinion, the NPP is not populated. Majority, not all of them, a few of them, but the few people are in a serious minority. But they are populated largely by people who see the party as a mere vehicle to be used to perpetrate their personal parochial agenda as against the government agenda, the agenda of the country. Because, like I said, in my opinion, the agenda of a political party ought to align to the agenda of the country. If your agenda does not align to the agenda of the country, then there's no reason why you should even exist as a political party. And I'm convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the agenda of the MPP as it stands now does not align to the agenda of the country. That this MPP is a threat to the rule of law. And they've shown us so many classical examples why they are a threat to the rule of law. You see, when you take constitution, when you understand constitutional system, constitutions are not just written, but constitutions are also sometimes can be unwritten, and sometimes you have a combination of both. And that's why you go to the UK and they do not have written constitutions. They're essentially governed by conventions. You go to Israel, same. That's that. So that the practices within your constitution also become constitutional. My honorable here said, and I think everything I'm saying, he said it in just one word, that he will ask the question, and that's why I decided to answer that question for him, whether or not the MPP has the interest of the country at heart. No, he just asked that question briefly. Because you see, because of the agenda to pursue the parochial interest as against the interest of their party, which must align to the interest of the country, they are breaching all conventions within their party. There's no commitment at assessing the state of their party in terms of their soul and spirit, because the soul and spirit of a political party are your ideals, your values, and your principles. Then immediately those ideals, those values and principles are no longer exist, or you are not in tune or aligned to those principles, then you've become a soulless party. You become a soulless party, and when you become soulless, then familiar spirits can find a place there, like it's happening now. Familiar spirits, because they are soulless. There's no respect for value, there's no respect for principle, there's no respect for any ideal. And so, because they have an agenda, a very parochial agenda, an agenda they'll struggle to convince that because you see from how they are behaving, clearly they are just planning a system that will reinstate His Excellency Mahmoud Bawumia there. And beyond that being evidence of their pursuing a parochial agenda, based on the record of His Excellency Mahmoud Bawumia, based on how they marketed him to Ghanaians and based on what he delivered and what he stands for, I have a right as a Ghanaian, because should he become their candidate and in the likely event he becomes the president of Ghana, he becomes my president, does he have the character? Does he have the integrity? Does he have the competence to lead this country towards a set agenda? And if he does not, and if it's demonstrated that he does not, then would the party not be doing this country a disservice? If in spite of clear reason, and if in spite of the clear agenda of this country, you want to force upon ourselves the possibility of having somebody who has shown clearly that he does not align to our agenda as a country. In my young life, I've never seen any election or any campaign be run as on a tribal and religious grounds like His Excellency Bawumia caused that MPP primaries to be done. And if you understand how the success of Kwame Nkrumah to foist Ghana out of about 4 different countries, and within those 4 different countries there are different tribes, to foist that one Ghana, because in my opinion that's our biggest strength. Our biggest strength, or one of the biggest achievements of Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was to within a very short time create a Ghana that was not being held back by the evils of tribalism. And then we throw that achievement, that success, because of one man, and suddenly we become so tribal. I don't want to go into the because that's too obvious. The failure in his economic leadership, the failure in his political leadership. But because of our peculiar situation, if you have any leader who comes and attempts to divide us as against unite us, then it's a call for alarm. And so if the party, in spite of all these, want to pursue that agenda, then their interest is in Ghana. Then their interest is in Ghana. And we, all of us as Ghanaians, ought to be interested in what is happening in the MPP and ask ourselves, are they worth being held as a credible political party still? Are they? Because in my honest opinion, my humble opinion, immediately a political party behaves in a manner that is adverse to the Ghana agenda, then it's no longer worth following. You understand? But we should be hopeful. We should be hopeful. No one person, no party can destroy this country. Because in the next 4 years, we have a situation where the party that was meant to give credible opposition to His Excellency John Mahama do not have any credibility. But Ghanaians should be hopeful. Because out of that ashes, a new life is being formed. And very soon, you see a new party that has soul, that has spirit, that respects values and principle. A new party. And hopefully, that party will lead to the crashing of this party, this elephant party, that has departed on all fronts from the ideals. That are not worth following anymore. So they should go ahead and undermine their own system. They should go ahead and undermine their own value set. They should go ahead and undermine the agenda of this country. Ghanaians are watching. We gave them 41% last year, not so. 2028, when they get 21%, then they'll realize that the interest of Ghanaians is to us creating that one strong Ghana. That Ghana that can reclaim its position once again as the black star of Africa. What was it? When Anadu, without consulting anybody, went to declare something for Israel. You know, we're talking about the position of the Israeli ambassador. I can bet my last penny that the position of the Israeli ambassador was based on the SY president's position on similar issues, where he took a position which was adverse to the position of Ghanaians. Yeah, it was a position that was adverse to the position. So, if just 8 years ago you had a president that was not considering what, because if you want to talk about the just to end. See, when you're a president of this country and you do not have commitment to a non-aligned position, the fact that in the non-aligned movement, one of the key leaders and founders of the non-aligned movement was Osandefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, together with Empratito and Komitito from Yugoslavia and what's called the Sri Lanka, and so immediately you are a leader of this country, you do not understand a historical position as a leader in that non-aligned movement, and you take positions which represent your personal position as against the position of the country. And the party sat down and they didn't have the sense of pride as Ghanaians to say anything. Listen, so to end, we should allow the MPP to head towards the doom, that 21% I'm talking about, or even maybe to go into the teens. When they get there, then they'll realize that at all times the people of Ghana will choose a position that represents the interest of this country as against any party's position. Now, when we do that, then we can take our rightful position once again as the black star of Africa.
Thank you very much. But these are the thoughts of a founding member of the party, and Mr. Bra, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Nyao Tamakulu. He says the MPP's party decision to elect a presidential candidate before the election of national, regional, constituency and polling station executives is against the party's constitution, which outlines a specific procedure that should be followed. In a party that has lost elections, it's crucial to take time to comprehensively analyze the factors that led to the loss and poor performance. Rushing into picking a leader and presidential candidate without this reflection may not address the underlying issues. Notable people in the party have raised valid concerns against this decision, but unfortunately, it seems like they are not being listened to. This lack of consideration suggests weak leadership that's more focused on serving a particular presidential candidate's interests rather than the party's well-being. Given the devastating defeat, the current executive lacks the moral authority to reorganize an election seeking to win power in 2028. A more thoughtful and inclusive approach is needed to revitalize the party. I insist that the current leadership responsible for the party's current state cannot be trusted to provide a credible election outcome. They lack the legitimacy and moral authority to elect a leader for a party aiming to win elections in 2028. It's imperative that a more credible, inclusive process and respect of the MPP's party constitution is adopted to ensure the party's future success. That's Dr. Nyao Tamakulu. Anas?
Yes, thank you so much. Every country needs a competitive, formidable opposition political party to consolidate democracy, good governance, the rule of law, rights and freedom. So the impending bout to select a leader that will lead the party in the next election is an important necessity, but the most important question that the party needs to interrogate itself has to do with whether indeed that particular spirit of togetherness that they used to consolidate in the past is still there. They need to be justice, or they need to be just to themselves, because the internal election, even though is important, but to what extent would this particular bout produce a leader that will appeal to the Ghanaian electorate, a leader that will catch the eye of the Ghanaian electorate. And this election is going to attract a significant interest from both old and then new members. So we are likely to see new contenders. But in my own personal observation, the NPP would have done themselves good if new set of leadership are selected to test the waters. Because frankly speaking, I question the credibility, the sincerity of some political party executives who appear to be faithful with the former flag bearer, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And I can tell on authority that some appear to be following Bawumia and appeared again to have fetched a large chunk of election for Bawumia in the Zongo areas and beyond. But unfortunately, they are rather a disaster to Bawumia, and they also contributed tremendously to the fall of Bawumia. So I think a new set of leadership is needed. That is number one. And then aside that, to nomination of nomination of guidelines. There should be guidelines in the lead up to the electioneering process to elect a leader to lead the NPP in the next bout. And this new nomination guidelines should be transparent. It should not, the guidelines should not be promulgated or should not be structured in such a way that it is it is aimed at favoring one candidate and then disadvantaging another candidate. And then the timelines for campaign activities is also important. And then the code of conduct for aspirants should also be transparent. So all these are factors that the NPP need to take into consideration. And then the other important point has to do with what my senior colleague just mentioned. You see, both the domestic and foreign policy rhetoric of the chief executive of a country or of a state or of a nation is very, very important. For instance, like what the rhetoric of Nana Addo, when he made mention that Ghana is in support of Ukraine in its war against Russia, and Ghana is in support of the Zionist regime in its genocidal onslaught on the women and children of Palestine or Gaza, in fact, was a clear apology. We don't need leaders like that. We need a leader. A leader that you will elect, even if the leader takes a particular position, at least there should be some level of sense. There should be some level of logic, even if the leader doesn't take a non-aligned position, because we've seen leaders like that in the past. But to take or to make a particular reckless rhetoric that aims to or that seeks to send some signal in the minds of the international public that Ghana is in support of the regime of Israel in its genocidal onslaught on the women and children of Palestine, while the International Criminal Court has put an arrest warrant on Benjamin Netanyahu. Is a lesson that we should take when selecting our leaders at the domestic level. So I think it is good to elect a leader, but there are certain guidelines, and then they need to be verified. And then the most important thing is the spirit of togetherness that I'm talking about. One requires no exceptional intelligence to perceive that the internal wranglings, the fragmentation in NPP is colossal. So in my own personal observation, they need all those who boycotted the party, Mr. Alan Kodjoki, Charmatin, our grandfather you've just mentioned, Dr. Nyao Tamaklo, and other men of high repute. There is the need to bring them on board to establish or to consolidate that spirit of togetherness before going on into the next election, or else it will be like we are tickling ourselves or we are skating on thin ice, and there is a likelihood that they may select a leader and will not see success in the next elections.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Pratt?
Well, first of all, we don't have enough time, and there isn't much to say. Everything that is happening in the New Patriotic Party itself speaks volumes. What has started happening is the same thing that happened that led them to this colossal defeat. 60 or so MPs, and I wonder who counted, going to Dr. Bawumia's house to sing songs and to do all kinds of things doesn't bring victory. These same 60 MPs, they did it the last time. What did it bring? Disaster. What is obvious is that it does appear that there are some people who are hell-bent on repeating what they did the last time. And if they repeat what they did the last time, they should not expect any different outcome. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, as you know now, and I'm sure if you've been following the news, Dr. Yawose Educhum has joined the race. Brian Champon says he's set up exploratory committee. It seems he has to declare very now because now the roadmap has started. Anyway, the party says they will hold a congress actually in July. So it looks like they are on this particular path towards organizing the primaries before going back to the grassroots. So Kennedy Japan first to declare, Dr. Bawumia clearly, there's Brian Champon, then of course there is Dr. Yawose Educhum. Those are the ones that have declared. But we are still looking forward to more people joining the race. There are those who say the machinery in place is still the machinery that put Bawumia there. So that machinery will do everything possible to succeed in that, right? But we'll see what happens, exactly what happens. Anyway, today is the birthday of the producer of the Gold Morning Conversation on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. I host that show. That's my producer, Eric Boatin's birthday is today. Happy birthday to you, Eric. Happy birthday to you, Eric Boatin. And of course, I'd like to say a big thank you to Comrade Kwesi Parajini, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. It's always wonderful to see him every Saturday morning. And of course, sitting to my immediate left is the Honorable Member of Parliament for Wawes, Vice Chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee. Sorry for sending him to the opposition for a brief moment. Honorable Peter Lanchini Tobu. And we're glad to have been joined by lawyer Andrew Apia Dankwa, who is a spokesperson for the movement of change. And of course, he's also followed in Solo's footsteps. And they've continued the grand announcement. We've been waiting. Because now you've joined the announcement. Solo was the one who was doing the announcement. We're still waiting. And we'll see what will happen. Because they keep telling us something big is coming. And we'll see. We're waiting for it. Of course, Anas Seydou Sando is an international affairs analyst and administrative secretary, office of Shia Muslim community. Honorable, briefly.
Yes. I just want to say good afternoon to my constituents. Somebody sent the message that I should say hello to Uncle Kwesi Pratt, and they want him to visit Wawes. I will try to see how I can send him there. At least we always enjoy listening to him.
You haven't been? I'll be surprised if you have not been to.
Okay. Next time we'll go together. Thank you so much.
And of course, happy birthday also to Yao Gato. Happy birthday. We are back same time next week with another edition of Alhaji and Alhaji. And of course, we're live on many other affiliate stations across the country. A big thank you to all of you. We're live, of course, on Pan-African television, on the social media handles, and live on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. I'm SENA NOMBO. See you soon.
To lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer.